The key cast for the FNaF movie was recently revealed, and while this news is incredibly exciting, there were a couple things that stood out to me as someone who was long anticipating this announcement, and also as someone who really wants this movie to stay accurate to the elements from the games. Well, actually, I suppose it was really just one thing that stood out to me. But before I get properly into it, this video is not going to have a whole lot of structure. It's mostly just going to be me ranting about this very niche topic that I'm weirdly passionate about, and that topic is the Aftons British accent. This video does not aim to explain why the Aftons should have always been British, or how the accent actually has some deep meaning and implications for the character of the Aftons because of the history of Britain or something. This is just a dive into the Aftons accent and how underappreciated an aspect of them it is. I don't know that Matthew Lillard, Josh Hutcherson, God, his name is gonna ruin so many takes. I don't know that Matthew Lillard, Josh Hutcherson, or Piper Rubio have ever done performances where their characters had British accents, but they are all American actors. Elizabeth is a very English-sounding name, whereas Abby is a more American-sounding name, and both characters are supposedly related to Mike, who is related to William, and they all have British accents in the games. Well, some of the games, but I'll get to that. It's been made clear by William Afton's voice actor PJ Haywood numerous times that the character's accent just started as an incidental thing. They were never intended to be British when Scott created the characters. The reason they're British is because Haywood just decided to give William an accent when voicing him, inspired by the character Hannibal Lecter, as well as just the British villain trope.
So the original audition said that he was looking for someone who sounded like a snake oil salesman. And to me, that, put me in mind of Hannibal Lecter, and one of the characteristics of the character was that he was perfectly calm no matter what he was doing, even if he was murdering someone at the time.
Did he say that you had to do like a British accent, or
no?
Was that just you?
The original audition specific in that at all. So it wasn't consciously meant to be British, but by the same token, I mean, I'm sure you know that, especially in the minds of people in the US, British usually means evil.
Scott didn't specify an accent for the character when looking for a voice actor, but he also didn't go against the accent that Haywood went with, which is notable because he did reject another actor experimenting with giving a previously unvoiced character an accent, i.e. Kellen Goff voicing Funtime Freddy, when he provided Scott with a take using a German accent.
Hello, little children. Glad to see you back again. Come closer. I'll sing a song for you.
That performance, of course, never made it into the game it was intended for, Sister Location, but Haywood's performance for Afton did.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips.
And not only did it make it into the final game, but it also led to Afton's daughter, Elizabeth, also having a British accent to keep things consistent.
Isn't this why you came here? To be with me again?
And eventually so did Michael, who, yes, was voiced by the same actor for William, but still, at this point, the game had been out for a while, and Scott had not gone back on this creative choice for the characters.
I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now.
Keep in mind, Michael was not part of the original game and was only added in a later update, one whose voice lines were recorded long after the ones for the base game, proven by reviews left on PJ Haywood's profile on Voices.com. Voices.com also provides evidence that Elizabeth's voice was changed following Haywood's performance as William Afton, as Scott reviewed her actor Zahra Jane Naqvi months before reviewing Haywood. After which point, he reviewed her once again for seemingly the same role, but this time with the specification, British. And so, being British became the Aftons' distinguishing trait. There was no debate about whether Elizabeth or Michael were William's children, because it was obvious from the fact that they shared an accent. Maybe less so for Mike, because same actor, but still, Michael has only ever had the one speaking role, the one voice line in any of the games, and in it, he has a British accent. You literally hear Elizabeth's shrill little British voice all throughout Sister Location at the beginning of every night.
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her?
This is how people have come to know the characters. PJ Haywood shared more about the process of auditioning and working under Scott's direction for his roles in an AMA on Reddit. And while it doesn't clear everything up, it does make it very much apparent that Scott knew what he was doing when he allowed this creative choice to be made for his characters. Regardless of whether it was his idea or not, he still went with it and adopted it as a part of the characters. It's not even that Haywood can only do the one type of voice in his roles. That much is disproven by his first actual role in the FNaF series, Soul Dozer in FNaF World.
Fools! How dare you challenge me?
Soul Dozer! I should have known it was you! You're not even in the right game!
I wasn't fully appreciated in my last outing, but now I'm back to show you my full power!
You know, to me, that voice actually sounds kind of similar to William from the Security Breach trailer. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Consider that Sister Location was the introduction of these characters, or at least the game's introduction of them. Prior to this entry in the series, the name Afton was only known from the Silver Eyes novel. At the time, many believed the character was simply a stand-in for Purple Guy in the book. So fans who read the book, or who watched Game Theory's video predicting the events of Sister Location, knew that this game would leave a huge impact on the lore, just by the inclusion of the character William Afton. That's how influential he is to this series.
So to see Afton Robotics in the source code teasing Sister Location is huge, because it means that the stories of Sister Location and Silver Eyes are linked.
There's no way that Scott would add such a huge, unmissable detail to this character without thinking it through and believing it to be a step in the right direction, especially considering Afton is never really seen on screen, and his voice is the only way through which players can perceive him. It's Afton. Scott couldn't afford to be sloppy with introducing a character this important to the franchise. Additionally, Elizabeth and Michael did not exist in any established canon before this game. This was their debut. So ever since the very concept of the Afton family has existed, the Aftons have been British. Going on to the games that followed Sister Location, Pizzeria Simulator brought William Afton back, with an entirely unexplained, drastically different design from the absolute peak that was Springtrap. He was still a corpse trapped in a decrepit bunny suit, but he looked totally different for no real reason other than, well, every other character had a new design. There's no lore explanation. It's like when an actor is recast in a Hollywood franchise. It's just quickly brushed over, like a sort of reboot for the character. But he still had the accent.
What a deceptive calling. I knew it was a lie the moment I heard it, obviously. But it is intriguing nonetheless.
He had the same voice actor and the same voice, albeit more withered to reflect the damage his body and soul underwent from years of being trapped in a suit. The last time we heard his voice was when he was fully human, fully alive, pre-Springlock. This would have been the perfect opportunity to reboot the character, especially considering Elizabeth and Michael didn't have a speaking role in this game, so there's no proof that William's accent would contradict theirs. But Scott stuck to his guns. William, and thus the rest of the Aftons, were still British. Things became shaky in Ultimate Custom Night. Afton had no new lines, but the one that was recycled from the previous game still used his accent.
I always come back.
Though a secret in the game revealed a voice that many speculate to belong to William Afton. One that doesn't sound too much like Haywood, or even very British. However, Special Delivery brought back Haywood with the same monstrous voice and British accent that was seen in the previous incarnation of Afton.
I've been living in the shadows.
You will not be spared. You will not be saved.
At this point, that voice has become iconic. It's the voice that fans like to imitate, the one people make text-to-speech bots out of.
I'd like to put all of her in it.
The one every FNaF fan associates with William Afton. But this video is about the accent of the Aftons, not the performances of their actors. Just know that the community is now comfortably familiar with the Aftons' accent. The way I see it, Scott must have changed his mind at some point about the accent. As far as I know, none of the books that feature the characters have made any mention of any kind of distinct accent. That may not seem like a big deal, but it is a little weird that even in the Fazbear Frights books, no such detail is ever made mention of. Not even as a little wink to the audience, a moment of fan service, or anything. Then, in the Steel War games starting from Help Wanted, none of Afton's previous voice lines were reused, despite many other characters reusing lines from previous games.
Did I catch you off guard?
No. Whoa!
Ready in the fearful reflection.
And in the Princess Quest minigame, yet another secret voice line was found and speculated to be William Afton. And it was not British. It was just a standard evil character voice with a standard American accent. It was very milquetoast. The trailer for Security Breach was the nail in the coffin. Afton had a completely different voice actor, and a voice that people only recognized was Afton's through context clues. Otherwise, no accent, and the regular old creepy villain voice was back.
When I first found you, you were nothing. You were small, pathetic. But now, you are more.
He pretty much just sounded like a Saturday morning cartoon villain.
Sleep. Well, to each his own.
At last we meet. The being that has caused me so much trouble. We sense your fury, your hatred, and its taste is sweet. Do you hate the spider? Do you hate Parker?
But now, you are more. Are you ready?
It's clear that William's new voice is just a facsimile of his previous one. The only difference being the removal of that pesky accent. Just look at the role which Scott most recently reviewed Hayward for. On the exact same day he reviewed Matthew Curtis for an identical role, 1 month before this trailer for Security Breach dropped. A detail which was never there for any of the other times Hayward played Afton. North American. If I had to guess, Scott regretted giving the Aftons an accent, because the backstory he had in mind for the characters gave no explanation for why they had such a dialect, since that detail was never planned. And as the franchise became more mainstream, newer people to the series would be confused as to why the key characters in an American setting had British accents. Seeing the actors who will presumably be playing the Aftons in the movie tells me that the British accents are being retconned to have never existed. And the best reason I can come up with for this is that it would be confusing and alienating to people unfamiliar with the series. But I strongly disagree with this choice, and I believe that it's a detriment to the Aftons as characters. The influence of Hannibal Lecter on William's voice helped to channel the snake oil salesman vibe that Scott wanted the character to achieve, because it emphasized his slimy, manipulative side.
That is rather slippery of you, Agent Starling. Sit, please. Now then, tell me, what did Miggs say to you? Multiple Miggs in the next cell. He hissed at you. What did he say?
She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream.
I knew it was a lie the moment I heard it, obviously. But it is intriguing nonetheless. Fascinating. What they have become. How can I resist a promise such as this?
The removal of his accent makes this part of him less apparent, resulting in a more one-dimensional and generically evil-sounding character. And the same goes doubly for the other Aftons, because boiling them down to their essentials, they really don't have much going on. It's their journeys throughout the story as well as their mysterious nature that fans really like the Aftons for. So combining generic voices onto generic personalities is not how one makes characters people can get invested in. The fandom knows the Aftons as being British at this point. It plays a part in making them recognizable, and it gives them personality among other horror characters, antagonists and protagonists. They are FNaF through and through. No one would confuse these characters for belonging to any other franchise. It even makes them stand out within the cast of characters in their own universe.
You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume.
But there's really nothing to worry about. The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night.
It was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way. We need you so that we can hide. We need you so that we can leave.
I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. I will make you suffer. Suffer like so many of the others. I am here to claim what is left of you.
The Aftons are the center of this series. They're at the heart of every event in the story. why not let them stand out? I hate to use the word interesting, but it really does make them interesting. This family is a bunch of outsiders. William is a murderous mad scientist who masks his true nature. Michael is broken by the tragedies that he's endured. Elizabeth is the child of a killer, oblivious to the evil around her. Making them all different from the people around them just highlights their importance to the story, which is in no way a bad thing. And even if there is no planned backstory for these characters, why they're British, how long they may have lived in England, why they moved, the mystery behind it allows for so much meaningless, fun speculation and fan interpretations of the Aftons. To strip them of that is to remove an entire layer of what makes them engaging characters, their ambiguous nature, something which is aided by them having a foreign accent. In other words, changing the Aftons to be American is ultimately a way of making them more in line with what conventional audiences expect. It makes them more friendly to the masses, because it doesn't make people question what they're hearing. And as ridiculous as it might sound, it does play a part in making them less engaging. If Scott's vision all along was just to make the Aftons incredibly basic sounding characters, then I think he shouldn't have made them interesting in the first place. The Aftons are not the Aftons without their accent. Besides, Scott, if you didn't want to come up with a backstory for William coming from the UK or whatever, if that was the reason that you retcon the Aftons to be American now, how do you explain literally the entire story for this franchise, which you made up as you went along with it? Why couldn't you have just done something like that for the Aftons? Why was that such a big issue? All this Remnant and Agony and Golden Duo and the box, all that's fine, but you draw the line at British. I doubt the points I've gone over will convert anyone to the side of the British Afton truthers, trademark pending, but I figured I should get my thoughts out there anyway because I firmly believe it's a mistake to go back on this choice. This isn't a serious issue or anything, it's just a personal gripe. You could argue that British representation matters to some people, which I'm not saying it doesn't, but representation of an English-speaking group in an English-speaking setting doesn't seem very pressing to me. Although it can be implied that the Aftons are immigrants or the second generation, and representation of those groups is definitely nice to have. But in the end, don't take any of this too seriously. I am genuinely disappointed that this aspect of the Aftons is no longer being treated as fact and is slowly but surely being erased from the FNaF canon. But if you don't feel the same way, that's totally okay, and you don't have to. Thank you for tolerating this silly little rant. Bye bye. I mean, this...
You will do as I say! You will bring me what I want! And if you fail me, then you will, both of you, burn!
Is just way less fun than this.
It is not your flesh that sustains me. It is your fear. Hide if you want. It did not save the others. It will not save you.